reading on her, let's say, soul contract, or whether there was, let's say, a variability in the types of, in the life path those Aaliyah had for her murder. And so what I got on the cards is that, how to say this, because there's a variability in the type of abuse that she experienced, or what the abuser did or does, or even the type of guy that abused him. Interestingly enough, I feel like the type of the abuser that she had, which is basically R. Kelly, who I think is the abuser, R. Kelly, there's a variability in what he does and does not do that has impact on her potential, and therefore impact on the reality that the producer had, who actually was involved in her murder. The specific, and I feel like the specific abuse that from R. Kelly involved was subconsciously created the specific kind of motivation for the producer to kill her. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case, but it's the type of thing where it's kind of like a law of attraction type of thing, where it's a thing where she was already programmed to be the victim. It's kind of that situation, that type of situation, and so that'll create a scenario. But there's a variability in the type of abuse that she would experience. But saying that because of the producer who murdered her in a malicious way, where he set people up to have her murdered, was already set in stone. Not set in stone, but it was already, his mind was already set. And because his mind was already set, there's a variability in the type of experience that she would have had regarding her murder. Or no, there's less variability because his mind, the producer's mind is already set. There's less variability in the type of experience that she's gonna have. There's kind of like, there's a variety, but not a big one. It will ultimately end up in her being murdered. I'm gonna make a reading about all the different types of life paths that she had. Okay, so I made a spiritual reasoning, or I created a video where there was this, where I tried to create try to explain the spiritual reasoning to why Aaliyah was murdered, the spiritual contrast that she made. And like I guessed before, where I actually made this, how to say this, I channeled into the spiritual reasoning to why she was murdered, the spiritual soul contract that was made to why she was murdered. And I got something similar in reading, but I got new information in the reading as well. I got something similar where, yes, with this card, yes, the specific soul, the reason for why she created that soul contract of her own murder is because of the fact that the specific vulnerability that the people expressed in the context of her murder is so powerful. The emotions that people release is so powerful that it creates so much change, and specifically the emotions that people release is vulnerability. It creates a specific vulnerability around the situation that is very powerful, and let's say change worthy. Yes, the soul in the cards, she did volunteer for this type of soul contract situation with murder, where she had a plan to be murdered in a specific way. she did originally have that intention in mind. Her soul wanted that murder. However, there are specific life path potentials in the way that something, there are variations in the way that she is murdered, or the way something turns out. And I'm gonna create a reading. I'm really interested. I'm gonna create a reading about the specific variations to how she was murdered, or the variations on the potentials of her murder. When we did a reading on Michael Jackson, there was a potential for him to stay quiet and not be murdered. But for Aaliyah, it was specifically a soul contract. Let me do one in the reading. Interesting. I asked about the variability in the specific life path that Aaliyah had, and apparently what I got is that yes, there is variability in the type of life path that Aaliyah had, would have, and would, but her fate would be similar or the same, but because of the specific contracts that are created regarding the situation, R. Kelly or her abuser, or somebody else, or her abuser, held her captive. And so there's that. This, in the reading, what I got is that there's actually a life path for her to be set free and to have more freedom in the context of relationships and not be held captive. And so in this life path, she finds another relationship, a different guy, and who end up being a different type of romantic, different type of guy. The abuse in the relationship is a lot different. If this person who kept her captive, R. Kelly would set her free. But in the path that shows he didn't set her free. She could have experienced more freedom, but the fate of her situation would also be negative, but in a different way. Yeah.